Good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is the South Broward Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated in partnership with the Gwen S. Cherry Black Women Lawyers Association. Thank you for joining us for Advocacy in Action, encouraging community engagement through continuous participation. Tonight we have an exciting lineup of speakers here to talk to everyone out in social media about how you can get involved in upcoming elections, how you can get involved in your local communities through different organizations, just so that you can become engaged and aware of what's going on around you and having an active voice. I'd like to introduce our dynamic panel. First, we have Natasha Hampton, who is an assistant city manager for the city of Miramar. She oversees the city's economic development, human resources, and child care and adult programs. Recently, Ms. Hampton was named as one of South Florida's 50 most powerful and influential leaders, and she has a passion for giving back through mentorship. With us here live, we have Katie Syed with the League of Women Voters of Broward County. She serves on their board of directors since 2016. She is an avid world traveler. She has a passion for programs that focus on literacy, developing reading skills for children, and social justice. She is involved with the League of Women Voters Say Yes to Second Chance effort. And remotely, we're pleased to have Christina Romulus, who is the Vice Mayor for District 3. She is an adjunct instructor at Palm Beach State College, a licensed nurse practitioner, and co-founder of Sky Administrations, a visual marketing and consulting firm. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for joining us from Boynton Beach.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. I want to thank you ladies for coming. This is just an exciting time that we have in our community in terms of just the desire to get people aware and engaged in what's going on politically on a local, and a state, and a national level. And so that's what we're trying to do here tonight, is to really try to figure out ways that you all in your respective capacities are doing those things, how you're reaching people in whatever way that you are to make them engaged and effective citizens. My first question I'd like to ask Ms. Hampton, since you come from a more non-traditional type of role in terms of civic engagement, as an assistant city manager, what types of programs or initiatives are you implementing, or is the city implementing, to get voters engaged in their local community?
Now, one of the most effective ways that we inform and get our community engaged is the old-fashioned walking the streets and going to meetings and going and talking with residents. So as an administrator, I spend a lot of time with our elected officials at HOA meetings and community meetings, informing residents about the different civic groups that they can be a part of, and advisory boards right in their city. Those advisory boards really give great insight as to how municipal government works, and how those the things that they feel affect them daily, how they can get real inside knowledge of how city government works. So really encouraging residents to be a part of their city by engaging in advisory boards. And we also have really great marketing and promotion initiatives like the Good Morning Miramar live stream program, and a live TV program that we have every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. You can tune into City of Miramar on Facebook or Periscope or channel 78 on Comcast Miramar TV channel 78, and watch Good Morning Miramar, where we talk all things Miramar, but not just Miramar, but Broward County and what's happening in the community. So it's really about just giving all of the information that we possibly can the old-fashioned way, and that's going right to our residents and giving them that information.
Thank you. That's really important. I think one of the recurring themes as we talk tonight and we get questions from listeners is really just to figure out, again, how are we going to get people engaged? How are we going to have them realize the importance of being engaged, from whether it's being engaged in code enforcement, electing your sheriff, electing your state attorney, your president, no matter what it is, that how policy affects them on every level. So I wanted to talk with you, Katie, if I could, about the League of Women Voters and some of the things that you all are doing in terms of engagement and how you're actually out in the community reaching voters.
Right. Well, first I want to say I'm really happy to be here, and the League and Delta Sigma Theta go way back. In fact, there were Deltas back in 1920 from Howard University who were marching in the parade with suffragists. So we're very proud of that tradition, and also proud to have local leaders like Natasha, who we count among our members. And the League is, has a long history. We got women the right to vote in 1920, and we are a nonpartisan organization. So although we don't endorse candidates, we are an advocacy organization, and we certainly do take positions on issues. And we encourage people to get involved with us, not only if they're interested in activities like registering voters, which is really at the heart of what the League does, but we have a very active gun safety committee, which has been activated and very much involved with things after the Parkland incident. And we have a number of other committees that people can get involved with, as well as a speakers bureau, which goes out into the community to give presentations. And this being an election year, there are things like forums where citizens can meet the candidates, where we partner with other organizations and coalitions in the community to involve citizens.
Well, that's definitely important. I think one of the main things is making people aware that there are so many resources and so many organizations in our community who are trying to get them involved in the process. And groups like the League of Women Voters, you've been doing this for over 100 years, just trying to make sure that every voice is heard. And I know that is a personal passion of yours, is social justice, making sure that everyone is represented. I'd like to ask the Vice Mayor a question as an elected official. Just can you tell us how it is that you decided to get involved by running for office? What made you want to take that next step from being just an entrepreneur and a very active volunteer in your community to moving into being an elected official?
Well, first of all, thank you again to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the Delta Theta Sigma chapter for inviting me on to be here this evening with all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story and share my experience. And I would definitely actually just harp on what Ms. Hampton has mentioned, the fact that you have individuals that are in the public that are engaged. So for myself, I was living in the neighboring city compared to the city that I'm actually serving in now. And in that city, that's where I had grown up since I was a child. And I had friends and I had individuals that I knew that were in office. So I would always be assisting them in terms of helping them in the background with their campaigns when they were running, and attending and watching videos of our city meetings and things like that. So I was aware and I was involved. And so this brought on that knowledge and the background knowledge of what it would take to actually run a campaign. I never intended to run. I always intended to stay in the background and just continue to help. And I think sometimes that as women, we tend to do that. We tend to want to be the strong backbone, the support, but we seldom tend to want to be in the spotlight and actually want to be in the forefront and actually run things. So I was a little hesitant to even want to engage myself in that direction, but with a little encouragement and a little push from some of my mentors and some people who believed in me, who actually I would say sometimes believed in me more than I believed in myself at some points, that pushed me and encouraged me to run. And so as I made that decision to run, people came on board, and basically it was kind of like the train could not go back into the station because people just kind of they saw something in me, they saw potential, and they wanted to be a part of my journey. So I really think that as we do events like this where we motivate and encourage individuals and let them see women like us and people who possibly look like them or who don't necessarily have the cookie cutter background of possibly being a political science major or even a lawyer. A lot of people think that in order to be a politician, you have to be a lawyer or you have to be a political science or a poli-sci major or criminal justice major. I am a nurse by profession, and I got into teaching nursing students after walking away from being a nurse. So, I mean, I never saw myself in politics, but that does not mean that you cannot engage and be involved in the actual process. You don't necessarily have to run for office, but being involved and just being engaged makes such a big difference.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. With respect to running for office, how did you prepare to run for office? Did you serve on local boards, whether it's a nonprofit or a planning council? How did you prepare yourself to be a viable candidate?
Absolutely. So I think anyone who plans to run for office in their respective municipality or their county or their state, you have to have some type of inside knowledge. It's very hard to run as a outsider candidate. And I don't necessarily say that as in you have to have been a politician. I simply just mean it as in you have to have some type of background knowledge. So for example, myself, I served on our Community Redevelopment Association Advisory Board. I also served on our Building Adjustment and Appeals Board. These were two boards that I served on that helped me to understand more of my city, more of the inner workings of how my city worked. And it also helped me to kind of realize some of the issues that were pertinent to the voters and to the electorate of things that really were important to them, that were impactful to them. And so I was able to bring that knowledge to the forefront and use that as my platform when I chose to run for office. Without that background knowledge, I would have been a very naive and kind of green, even though I was to a certain extent, I would have been very naive and green as a candidate because I wouldn't have even known the main issues of my municipality, of my city. So it's very important to serve on some boards and really get to know the leaders and the department heads in your city. Just get to know them and talk to them and learn from them.
Thank you so much. I believe we have a question from the audience.
Yes, this is a follow-up for Christina Romulus. The question is, how did you gain your supporters?
Well, see, and that kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, where I did not solely just jump into the scene of running for office. I had been doing a lot of background work even before officially stating that I was wanting to run for office. I was serving on 2 boards here in the city. I was helping other candidates in their run for office. And that exposed me naturally to other people. People kind of started to know me and know my name. And so naturally that kind of just the grassroots efforts of helping other individuals run their races and being involved, going to meetings, standing up at commission meetings and making statements on certain things. People started to get to know me and they were familiar with my name, not to the level of notoriety or fame, but at least my name was not completely foreign to a few people, and at least the people who mattered, who had the networks to be able to help push and really get my name out there further to their networks. Really, I would say campaigning is all about creating that network. When you have individuals and I know we're going to get a little off topic here when I say things like Emily's List or Ruth's List, when you have individuals like those who can kind of build a network for you and get you in touch with the right people who are influential, who have networks, that's how you really build your support. You have to get in touch with the right people and really create those networks.
Sure, can I just follow up with that? You know, I don't want to minimize authenticity because you're getting up and speaking at commission meetings was about your care, the care for your community, the care for wanting to see things change and the issues. And that's what people were drawn to. And I think we're seeing more of that. People want authenticity. They don't want a cookie cutter. They want people who they believe will fight for what they need. And that authenticity plays a really big part in drawing people to support you. So yes, it's important to be a part of boards, and yes, it's important to speak on behalf of your community, and yes, it's important to have a network, but it has to be authentic because people can tell the difference. And right now in this country, authenticity is what we need. And I think that you're seeing that. I've never met Vice Mayor, but just from this interaction, there's an authenticity about her. And so that people are drawn to that. And that's what you want. And that because the fight is real, and people want real people who are fighting for their real issues.
And I think that's a great segue, as the Vice Mayor mentioned, groups like Emily's List and, nonpartisan groups like League of Women Voters. But when we talk about voter engagement, we seem to have this group of very consistent voters in this country who come out no matter what the election is, and then non-voters who need something to get them engaged. Right. They need a Barack Obama type of campaign, or most recently in Alabama with Doug Jones, who were kind of pushed with the whole issue of his involvement or his alleged involvement with minors. So how do we turn that page on making sure that those people who vote remain consistent voters, and those who are non-voters, getting them engaged to see the importance of exercising that very important right that we need? And I'll turn that to you.
Well, I would just say that it's really important, I think, for all voters to realize that every single vote absolutely does count. And I would be reminded by our former mayor, Barbara Sharif. She tells the story about how she ran for office and initially lost the election by very few votes, and then ran again. And of course, she was elected. But I think it's just important for people to understand that even in a year where there's not a president running, it's still so important, not just to register to vote, but actually to vote either by mail or to vote on election day or to do early voting. We have so many choices here in Florida, and we are fortunate for that. So I think it's not only our, it's a responsibility as Americans. We're fortunate enough to have that privilege. And in all communities, especially the local elections, which can be lost or won by so few votes. So we really can have an impact. And I think that's one thing that people want to know nowadays too. And I think Natasha and the Vice Mayor would also echo this, that people are feeling a little bit powerless. And the vote certainly does give us that power and that voice. It's a way that we can exercise our voice.
Thank you. I believe we have another question.
Yes, another follow-up question from Ms. Syed. You mentioned the Women's Weapons Safety Program in response to the Stoneman Douglas situation. Can you give us a little bit more information, please?
Well, what we have is we have a gun safety committee, and I'm proud to say that actually it was a league member who started the Florida Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence. And I believe that the coalition is made up of over 100 groups, and they work together to fight for legislation which would address the issues like the assault weapons ban and universal background checks. So those are positions that the league has taken after careful study, and we firmly believe that we need these laws put in place to make our schools safer, and we stand firm on those positions.
Thank you. I wanted to just talk about when we were talking about non-voters and inconsistent voters or consistent voters, excuse me. Organizations like Black Lives Matters, the Me Too movement, the political power that the students from Parkland are showing in pushing forward for an assault rifle ban. Where do you see that going with this country with so many groups looking to move forward a certain agenda? How do they harness that? How do they stay engaged? What do they do to make sure that their platforms are being heard? And I'll just throw that out to the panel.
Yeah, one of the things that I think the movements that are happening now, how they're different from prior movements, is that there is a deliberate effort to understand how these offices work, how these elected offices work. For example, there's a governor's, the Florida governor's seat that will be up, and it's really important for voters to know what that governor's seat represents, what it's responsible for. The Florida statute states that the governor's primary responsibility is to appoint cabinet members and judges. And what does that mean for you locally? What does that mean when you have a judge that is a first-time offender to 28 years versus someone who's offended multiple times and only gets 2 years? That governor's seat could very well have chosen that judge that sentencing that way. So it's really important. And these movements like Black Lives Matter, like the Stoneman Douglas, these kids are really understanding what these elected office positions do. And that's the why. We need why. And I get it, Katie, and I hear you about the right to vote and the fight for that right. This and that still remains true. But today we need a reason why. The reason why is you only get that when you understand fully what these elected offices do and why it's important that you're putting the right people in these seats.
Great. Katie,
yeah,
you have any?
Well, I just want to add that we fully support the efforts of the movements like Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and the young students from Parkland. We think they're awesome, frankly. And we, in honor of those Parkland students, we have opened up our membership for the next 3 years. High school and college students will be able to become league members without any membership fee. So we encourage all students, you have to be at least 16, but anyone 16 through college can join the league. And I would say that the league not only is a good place to become an advocate, but also to get a good education, like the Vice Mayor was talking about, to get out into the community, to attend board meetings, to speak if you feel like that's your place, like you have something to say about an issue in your community, and to learn, get a firsthand experience of who the officials are who are making decisions. Because if we don't take that first step to get out there and educate ourselves and to become involved, decisions will be made that affect our everyday lives, and these could adversely affect us.
Absolutely.
So it's important to be engaged. This is the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask a question to the Vice Mayor on that same point. With CNN and Fox News and MSNBC covering all of the events that are going on, from whether it's the Parkland shooting, it's the Me Too movement, it's an officer-involved shooting. There's so much information, and with today's social media just kind of bombarding people, endlessly. How do you help voters, or how can voters overcome being fatigued by having so many issues to deal with that they don't end up being disengaged from the process because it's so overwhelming?
Well, you just asked me a very packed question there, so I'm going to have to try to unpack that. First of all, let me start off by saying, number one, I am so proud. And if anybody follows me on social media, they've been seeing my comments and my posts. I am so proud of these students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas and the stance that they are taking, and the fact that they are not sitting down and no longer accepting the thoughts and prayers from elected officials and other people around the nation about an issue that affects their lives so closely. As a parent, this is something that's important to me because I have my students, my kids that are going to be students that are going to be being raised through the public school and the school system, the education system. I want them to wake up in the morning and to go to school and feel safe. So first of all, again, I want to commend these students. I want to commend their just courageousness, standing up in the face of the NRA and other individuals that are even bad-mouthing them for the fact that they're standing up and speaking out about this atrocity that's happened to them and that other students are exposed to as well. Second of all, I just want to remind us that history is repeating itself. If you look back at the civil rights movement, if you look back at Vietnam, right? If you think about all those events, who took the lead in those events? Who took charge? Who was the one? Who were the ones who were standing at, sitting at those counters peacefully, leaving their college, their education, their school to go and be a part of those marches? It was students. So, I mean, we're simply seeing that again, and it's in this instance, and it's at this time, and it's for this particular situation. But I believe we should feel privileged to be able to be a part of history in the making. I believe that these students, we have already seen it. They're already creating legislation. For example, in the state of Florida, a bill was passed by the House and the Senate and signed by the governor and put in law that we have now a higher age for people to buy guns. You have to be 21 now. There's also a mandate where if you see someone who has a certain mental instability, we can go into their home and confiscate their guns if they're a danger to themselves or a danger to others around them. So these are just wins that we can already say that the students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas and other students who are joining in that movement have accomplished. You can add in Me Too to that. You can add in Black Lives Matters to that. All of these movements have gone and gotten victories that we can physically and tangibly see. So for me, I believe that one of the things that we need to make sure we keep doing is encouraging these types of movements, encouraging people to come out and stand out and speak. And to answer your question directly regarding how do we prevent our voters and ourselves, frankly, from getting overloaded and bombarded by all of the news sources, my advice, because this is what I follow, first and foremost, pick one news outlet and let it be a neutral news outlet. Don't go too far right, Fox News. Don't go too far left, MSNBC. Okay, let's try to keep it central. So for me, I've picked NPR. NPR is kind of like my it's neutral. It's not too left. It's not too right. It gives me the facts and I can make up my mind about those facts and I can decide how I want to vote based on those issues. So I think that's one of the things that we can make sure we keep sending that message to our public, that we need to kind of put blinders on a little bit and not to get pulled in so many directions, because that's how we keep polarizing our country. And if we can remind our public and our individuals that really let's focus on the facts, let's make our own mind up and not be told by the pundits how to think and what to think, then we can actually make some good informed decisions. And when we get to those voting booths in the ballot box, we can make decisions for us, for our children, for our future, for our livelihoods. I think that's what's so important for us in this day and age.
That's wonderful. Ms. Hampton, I wanted to follow up and just talk to you about engagement on a local level. Now, I know you mentioned that the city of Miramar made great efforts to make sure that its citizens are engaged. What types of things, again, are you doing? How are you reaching citizens to let them know about upcoming items on the agenda? How is that publicized? Just how do people know what's going on in their community?
In every way, shape, form, or fashion of communication, the city of Miramar is doing that, whether it's via social media, through our morning show, or the content that's posted on our social media from our city webpage, miramarfl.gov. From that, we also distribute weekly Miramar Today, which has information when our commission meetings are taking place, the items that are on the agenda. That's a weekly distribution. We also distribute to our business community items that directly affect our businesses, whether there be code changes or things like that. At any events that we're having, we have an informational booth at every event to give out information. So every way, shape, form, or fashion, including going to HOA meetings, seeking out residents, even stopping them on the street and giving information, and just working with our elected officials at every turn to provide the information. So it's really about, and Katie mentioned it earlier, you can have all of the outlets of information, and that's what the city of Miramar does. It does afford that. But you as a citizen, you as a resident, you as a voter, or you as a potential voter, you have to get involved. You have to seek the information and the avenues, because it's there, it's readily there. And so in the city of Miramar, we just make it a business to be about the community and inform the community, and do that in the different languages our diverse community calls for. And so we make that available. And it's just the continued engagement. As administrators, we stay engaged, and we find that assists in keeping our community engaged. Because we as a city, our elected officials, our administrators, our staff, we are engaged. We think that plays a really big part in keeping our residents engaged as well.
Definitely. And I just want to segue from that and ask Ms. Syed a question, because as we talk about voter engagement and keeping people aware of things that are coming up, we have the midterm elections right around the corner. So I just want to talk about the League of Women Voters and what your focus is going to be for the midterm elections in terms of voter engagement and voter education.
Right. Well, we do have a speakers bureau, and once the state constitutional revision commission finishes their work, which I believe will be in May, we will be going out, and we will be offering anyone who wants us to come and speak to their group. We'll discuss what will be on the ballot in November, and that election will be November 6th, and the primary is August 28th. So we do have that, and also there are many opportunities to get involved in candidate forums where people can get to know, for example, judge forums, where it's difficult if you're a voter to know which judge you want to vote for. And that's one forum I would encourage anyone who has the opportunity to go to a forum where the judges are present, just attend and listen. And when you go into fill out your ballot in November, you can make a more informed choice. And yeah, so and we will be focused on get out the vote. There are some constitutional amendments, like you mentioned, I worked on second chances. So that will be Amendment 4 on the November ballot. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that in terms of, because that's actually a very important piece. As we talk about getting non-voters engaged, that's a very special group of what are now non-voters, and trying to get them back into the political process.
Yes, in fact, that group of voters in Virginia could have made the difference in who was elected governor in that state. So yeah, the restoration of rights would give back the voting right to people with past felony convictions. And right now there are approximately nearly 2 million, like 1.7 million people who are disenfranchised. So you have whole communities where the voters have been disenfranchised and lost their vote.
And I want to ask this question just to the panel. I want to thank Ms. Syed. You proudly mentioned Delta Sigma Theta's long-standing history of social action. We were actually founded January 13, 1913. Wow. And our first act was the Women's Suffrage March. And so when you look at organizations like Delta Sigma Theta, other Greek lettered organizations, what are some of the things that we could be doing to help increase voter engagement? And anyone from the panel.
Well, I'm not really, I mean, you can become, you know, you can register voters as third-party registrars. And you can also sponsor forums, as I mentioned before. We have a brochure that we put out, the elected officials brochure. So, you know, just giving out information to your members, and I believe it spreads. So your member gets the information, goes home, shares that with their family members, and so it goes.
And forums like this, you know, like what we're doing right now. I think this is the second one that I have been privileged to be a part of. But definitely doing forums like this, which Delta Sigma Theta seems to be like the forefront of, is really important and important for the continuation.
That's great, because we are trying to make sure that social action is a component of everything that we do. It is so important, whether it's visiting Susan B. Anthony Center, making sure not only that the women have toiletries, but also understanding that, you know, we need to help them with getting back into the workforce. From getting back into the workforce, they can get engaged in other ways. So we are definitely committed to it. It's the foundation of the organization. So we're thankful that you're here helping us to continue with that legacy. I believe we have another question.
Yes, and it's a follow-up. Is the League of Women Voters an organization only for individuals residing in Broward County area, or is it open to any person interested in joining?
Well, I should have made that clear before, but actually when you join the League, you are a member of the State League of Women Voters and also the National League of Women Voters. So you get a good bang for your buck. You automatically are a member of 3 levels of organizations. And we operate in Broward County as a kind of franchise of the state unit. So if you live in Miami-Dade and you're watching this, you can join whichever league that you choose to, but you should know that we have over 30 league chapters around the state of Florida. And I proudly say that we have the largest league chapter in the whole United States. I believe in Orange County, Palm Beach County also has a large league, but here in Broward, we're growing. And at this particular time in our nation, we are growing by leaps and bounds here in Broward. So we invite everyone, men and women, even though it's League of Women Voters. We have quite a few men who are members, and we're proud of them all. And whether you know a little bit about politics or you just want to learn more and you want to become engaged, we're happy to have you.
I'm going to give you this little shameless plug for the League of Women Voters. Vice Mayor mentioned earlier about picking one source for your information. And I'm going to tell you that my being a part of the League of Women Voters, this is where I get my information. And I've been in municipal government for years. And this is by far the most in-depth, factual information that you will find on any issue that's affecting Florida and just nationally. It's an amazing organization. So that's my shameless plug for the League of Women Voters. They didn't pay me for that. I just wanted to just kind of piggyback off of that a little bit.
Well, I want to give the Vice Mayor an opportunity just to give her own shameless plug, just to talk about very briefly some of the things you may be doing in Boynton Beach that can get voters engaged, projects that you may have going on, items coming up on the agenda that they should be aware of.
Well, I'm always excited to toot our own horn for Boynton Beach. It's such a great place to live. And it's also, I think, one of the best times to live in Boynton Beach. So honestly, I want to give a shout out to the League of Women Voters because, again, they are a tremendous entity and they are encouraging individuals and you know, not just women, but again, also men to get involved, to be engaged. And I remember when I was running for office, they hosted a forum. So that allowed for individuals of the public to come and to get to know me and to hear me and to understand why I was running against an incumbent and why that my opinion should matter. So it helped give me a platform, and it helped to give my race and my reason for running merit. So I do appreciate the League of Women Voters. I appreciate the work that they're doing, not only here in Palm Beach County, but in Broward County, in Miami, in Orlando, in the United States as a whole. So one of the things I was saying of why it's important to be here in Boynton Beach, we actually just unanimously approved our town square project, which is going to be a downtown that we're literally building from the ground up. You can basically say we've never really had a true downtown here in Boynton Beach. So, you know, I know you guys have Las Olas down there, but we hope to be able to bribe you guys over to Boynton Beach and have you guys just come see the beautiful things that we have to offer. Construction has already started. It's going to be a very quick process, and we hope by 2020, when you drive down Boynton Beach Boulevard, you're going to be seeing a whole new side of Boynton Beach. So it's an exciting time to live here. It's an exciting time to come visit here if you haven't been. And I'm just excited to be in this seat and representing my city, representing my constituents, and making these decisions that help to improve our quality of life here, help to improve people's perception of us, and really just help to make our residents proud to live here and call Boynton Beach home. So thank you.
Well, with that said, I'm actually excited to have spent this time with the three of you. I'm excited about the fact that we have three very dynamic women helping to engage voters in different ways. So I think we're in good hands, whether it's on a local or a national level, that we're going to continue to see our citizens be represented in a positive manner and in a manner where it's welcoming for them to express their voices. So again, on behalf of the South Broward Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and in partnership with the Gwen S. Cherry Black Women Lawyers Association, I want to thank everyone out in Facebook and YouTube for joining in. Tonight's program, Advocacy in Action, is near and dear to our hearts. We want to make sure that everyone is engaged and empowered and aware of how important it is to know what's going on in your community, to be involved with your community, and to have your voice heard. So this is one of many segments that we're going to have. So I thank you, ladies, for taking the time out. I look forward to seeing you on future panels, and I wish you the best in your endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Having us.